My name is Patty Baker, and I am a registered nurse and occupational therapist assistant, and I currently don't work. I'm a stay-at-home mom. We live in Clinton, Tennessee, and I have 2 children, Avery and Aiden, and a husband, Chuck. Our life before the diagnosis was just the typical life with 2 kids that were one in preschool and the other in kindergarten. We did soccer, we did football and basketball and baseball and dance and gymnastics, and then life just kind of changed quite a bit. At the end of December 2012, my husband came home. He came into the room and he told me that he had a large tumor in his chest, and he showed me the x-ray.
And within a few days, I found out I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. Everything hit with Avery. Found out her diagnosis on April the 1st. So we were both kind of dealing with the same thing at the same time. There for a while, I think a couple different times. She was at Children's doing chemotherapy, and I was at UT doing chemotherapy. So we were stretched pretty thin.
It was very stressful, and you almost feel torn to have 2 people in your life with cancer and in active treatment of cancer, both receiving chemotherapy. And so sometimes I had to choose Avery over Chuck because there were things that Chuck's family, his brothers or his parents, were able to help him with.
As a doctor with her diagnosis of leukemia, I mean, leukemia is always bad. I mean, you always think the worst, but her particular diagnosis, ALL, that's actually one that's not as bad for children. So we've got hope, and the prognosis is good.
I don't think either one of the children understand the true situation, that it's life-threatening. Aiden will say, I hope Avery doesn't die, but I don't know that he understands it. I've never really thought that she was gonna die. That just never, it kind of wasn't an option.
The hardest part of her diagnosis is probably me and my wife worrying. We think that she's going to do fine, and we've got faith that she's going to do fine, but we still have a little bit of what if this happens, what if that happens.
People have, wondered if I'm angry with God or questioning my faith or whatever, and I just never have, because I don't think God is like that. I don't think there's bad things that are put there to hurt you. I think He's there to help you through the bad things.
With my diagnosis of cancer and my daughter's diagnosis of cancer, we were kind of shocked because that usually doesn't happen so close together within the same family. But we were lucky. People from all over kind of, I guess, heard about us, and they would do anything they could do to help us. We were, like I said, very lucky and appreciative to all the people that thought of us and tried to help us in any way they could.
My message to the candidates would be that thank you, first of all, for stepping up and trying to raise as much money as possible for research and support and things like that, because without the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, I don't think we would be at a 90% survival rate for Avery's disease, and I'm just very thankful for people that are willing to give time and money.
With Avery being the Girl of the Year, we're hoping that maybe that will help increase awareness of blood cancers and try to let people know that anybody can be affected, both her and me, myself. Cancer can affect anybody at any time.
I hope that this experience will affect Avery in a positive way, that she will be a better person, a more compassionate person, someone who volunteers, someone who gives back, someone who is thankful for everything that they have and that they can give to others.
Trevor and I met in 2010. My wife at the time ran a women's drug program in Morristown. And his father's in prison for 25 to 30 years for armed robbery. And he went in prison when Trevor was like 1, so he's never met his dad. And his mom was in jail for drugs and stealing, and she was court-ordered to go into this drug program. And he doesn't have any family that can take care of him. So we started watching him. And I was actually gone out on the road working, and I came home and he was there. And I've never had kids because of my job, and I was home for 3 days. And I just fell in love with him. And I got up the third day, packed my bags to leave. I was gonna be gone for about a week. And he looked at me and he said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I gotta go to work. Remember I told you I travel for my job." And he looked at me and he said, "What about me?" And I freaked. I'm like, well, you can't go. And so I got in my car and I was driving, and I called my wife and I said, "Hey, why don't we just hang on to him?" And I said, I just looked in his eyes and I seen a child that had nowhere to go. Our journey with leukemia began in February of 2012, actually. I was leaving to go to Australia to do a tour, and he wasn't feeling good, and we went to the circus the day before I left. And he didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to go backstage. He just wanted to go sit in a seat. And I thought that was kind of odd. And I thought maybe he just had the flu or something. And I went ahead and went to Australia, and about 3 weeks after that, which would have been about the middle of March now, I got an email about 4 o'clock in the morning my time that said to call home. And I called home, and he had gotten sick at school, and the school nurse knew enough to know that something was wrong. His gums were white. When I got the call, it was hard because I'm literally in another world at that point. You know, by airplane, I'm about 28 hours away. I'm sitting in a hotel room, I just started screaming a lot. I really did. And I'm a Christian, and I have strong faith in God, but it was pretty weak at that moment. Because you just think, why him? You know, all your typical questions. The diagnosis of him having leukemia was tough. I think for me, it's changed me. It's definitely put my faith in God stronger. Kind of realized that there's nothing you can do. And he had always looked at me as the guy that fixed everything for him. And this was something I couldn't fix. So, you know, my faith in God definitely strengthened. It's brought us closer together. He had always felt like I was the one he could count on. And I had to, you know, reassure him that I'm here, I'm not going to leave him. And so I think for us to just go through this process and chemo every week, and the medicines and the mouthwashes 3 times a day, it just brings you closer together. I think it's just kind of a natural thing. Trevor, he's an amazing kid. He's a kid that everybody that meets him falls in love with him. He's got an extremely great disposition for the life he's had, and not having any real family that he can count on. He's just like the most enjoyable kid to be around. Good spirits. From the beginning of this, you know, what we term as our journey, not one time has he ever complained about having to go in and get chemo or get spinal taps or bone marrows, and he just takes it in stride. Trevor is 8 now. He just turned 8 in November on Thanksgiving. He goes to New Center School here in Sevierville, which has been a school that is amazing. Within 30 days if he was diagnosed, they actually did a fundraiser dance for him and sold t-shirts, and they started a thing called Trevor's Troops. So he's involved in the school as he can be. He got back to school in November of last year. So he likes going to Cub Scouts and the Boys and Girls Club here in Sevierville. So to look at him, you wouldn't know anything's wrong with him, because mentally to him there's not. So he's your normal, everyday active kid. I want Trevor to have the life that that none of his family ever had, the life that he never imagined he could have. And I really believe in my moments of being alone that part of this is part of his story to tell. At the end of the day, somebody in my church had told me one day, and I really live by this now, that God will take his mess and turn it into a message, and he'll be the messenger. So when we get there, it's going to be great to look back and know what he accomplished and what he did, and even the strength he is for other kids. I just want him to be healthy, and I want to be able to look back at this and say, this is a mountain in my life I conquered, and move on.